Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight on another episode of Breaking Reality. My name is Joshua McGuire, and I'm your host. And tonight we have Greg Mueller with us, and we are going to be discussing shadow work on tonight's show. Greg, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. It's 11 p.m. here, so let's try to keep my energy up. But I'm doing all right.
Excellent. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go ahead and get into tonight's conversation.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a coach. I'm a men's coach. So lately, I put a lot of my energy into helping men with their emotional fitness, basically getting in touch with their bodies, being able to do their emotions, if you will, feel their emotions. Like most coaches, I had a past life in a totally different world in aerospace and defense. And for the last 3 years, I've been doing what I feel I'm called to be doing. And this whole idea of shadow work is the concept is relatively new for me. But then when I started to learn about it, I realized, oh yeah, this is some of the work that I've been doing on myself for a while, and work with other men for a while. But it helped to really frame it in a really useful way.
Right. Excellent. So, why don't you go ahead and let's just get into the conversation and just, start off by telling people what shadow work is. Because a lot of people have no clue. When we say shadow work, they have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe it's helpful to first back up and say, like, what is the shadow, right? So it's nothing. It doesn't have to be anything mystical or uh, crazy or even complicated. Basically, it's just the aspects of our being, the parts of us that we deem to be unacceptable or flawed or inferior, and therefore we suppress them beneath our conscious awareness, so that we just don't have to acknowledge them. Right? So, like, this could be specific emotions that you don't feel comfortable expressing or feeling. Like, this could be disowned aspects of, like, your feminine side or your masculine side, just thoughts that you're ashamed of, flaws that all human beings have, like little selfishness, resentment, greed, pettiness, things like that. That is part of being a human being. But your ego decides, no, you can't feel that, you can't think that at all. So it hides in the shadow, right? And then it sits there, it festers, and since we can't, even if we try to disown that and not make it a part of us, we can't remove a part of who we are. So it has to go somewhere. So it usually is either projected onto somebody else, like when we're really super triggered by how somebody else is. That's a pretty good sign that that's a projection of our own shadow. Or it comes out in our own feelings of, like, shame or humiliation, or like psychosomatic illnesses, neuroses, needing to control, needing to control others, and manifests in all sorts of ugly ways. And it's really just a projection of the stuff that we're not wanting to own within ourselves, right? And so we want to do that work. It's basically, first of all, just acknowledging that it's even there, that all this shit's there, and that it's a process of, I like to think of it as just accepting it and having unconditional love for it. In a nutshell, it's kind of what it feels like it is for me.
Right. It's kind of a way I've heard it put is kind of coming to terms with your own interpersonal demons.
That's another beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's all those things that kind of haunt you or bug you or and it's those one of the hardest things I think for a lot of people with dealing with shadow work is even admitting that those things are there, and then taking that that really hard look at them, just kind of staring at them and just going, okay, I've got to come to terms with this, and I've got to learn how to deal with this and how to manage this so this doesn't continue to be a problem.
Yeah. And they always are problems. But the interesting thing about it is, so let me back up. So I see this happen both in myself and others, like in two ways. Like first is just like I'm in denial, right? Like there's nothing wrong. Like no, I
Right.
don't act like that. That's not my problem. Like it's this guy's problem or his. And then there's like something might happen, painful might happen in life, and you're forced to like be real with yourself and acknowledge it. And you're like, okay, yeah, I got to work on this thing. But then what I've seen and what I've experienced personally is a second trap where it's like, okay, I got to work on this, but then it's like, I got to work on it so I can kill it, like, so I can get rid of it. So like, so I can get it out of me, right? Which is kind of not the point.
Right.
Like, it,
It's not something that you really kill or get rid of. It's something that you learn how to manage and control.
mhm, yeah. And oftentimes it's not even something that it can kind of sound like even just by the name like it's in the shadows, so it's like dark, it's evil, it's bad stuff, but this is just like stuff that's a part of a normal healthy whole human being. Like for me personally, I'll make it personal, like most of my emotions my whole life were in my shadow. I just wasn't really able to access them, and I didn't want to access them because I thought, oh, it just clouds your thinking. Like I make better decisions solely with my rational mind. Like those just, people who are too emotional, they can't be trusted. Like, and I didn't want to feel mine because they were painful and I didn't know how to process them in a normal, healthy way. Anger specifically. I grew up, I saw a lot of anger in my household. So I'm like, I don't ever want to be angry. Like if I'm angry, bad shit's gonna happen. So like
Right.
I could not go to anger at all, and I still have troubles going to anger. But anger is not something that I need to ever like remove from my life. It's like you're supposed to get angry sometimes in life. So
Right. And that's, that's an important point to put there and stuff, that a lot of people do repress and shut down these emotions, and they don't allow certain aspects, and you specifically was talking about working with a men's group and being a coach for men. One of the things that, society says is, men need to put on this stoic front, and they
mhm.
can't show weakness, they can't show sadness, they can't show sorrow. Something happens, they're just supposed to, grin and bear through it, and
Mhm.
just kind of, you hear the phrase, just suck it up.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of what we're talking about with the shadow work, is where you just kind of take that stuff and kind of push it off to the side into this area, and you just kind of bottle it up and don't mess with it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then, you leave that there long enough, and it just festers,
Mhm.
and it's going to cause you issues. It's just like having a wound. If you don't take care of that wound, and infection starts to get into it, and that festers long enough, it's going to cause you a lot of problems. And that's kind of what
Yeah.
happens when people ignore doing the shadow work and dealing with those aspects of themselves. It sits there and festers, and it comes out in negative ways in other aspects of our life.
Mhm. Mhm. What is I'll ask you, what are some of the, I know you've done a lot of shadow work yourself. What were some of the, maybe just one or two of the ways where you said, okay, I need to find something here and I need to address it? What were some of the symptoms and then the work?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of resentment from. I grew up being uh, being bullied in school and stuff, and so I had a lot of resentment and anger towards that.
Yeah.
And I was always told, to just, you know suck it up, get through it and stuff, and don't, it's just part of life. It's the way it is. Oh, people are gonna be like that. And so I had all this anger that was just kind of bottled up from all of that I never dealt with, that I never worked through because I was just told to suck it up and get through it.
Hmm.
And I found myself as I was going on becoming a very angry person and going to anger really quickly at things that were just trivial, that didn't really mean anything. It wasn't something to get upset over. It wasn't something to get mad about. And but I was finding myself doing that because I had all this anger built up inside of me that I never dealt with.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I sat with that and started to deal with a lot of that I was able to start going, that doesn't really matter. And another thing was, because of going through the bullying and stuff, I always worried about what other people thought, what other people would say.
Hmm.
And part of that even came from my upbringing. My parents was always, well, you have to act this way because what will people think if you do something differently, or if you act differently, or if you don't adhere to society's norm. Or my family grew up a very strict religious family, so if I didn't act a
Yeah.
way that was according to that, then, oh well, that's going to look bad on my parents, that's going to look bad on the family.
Hmm.
And so I was kind of bottled into this certain area. And so I was always real conscious about what people would think about who I am and what I do and what I'd say. And so I would get depression, I'd get anxiety, I'd have all these different issues revolving around what people thought about me. And as soon as I learned to let that go,
Hmm.
I became immensely happier.
Hmm.
It got to the point to where I realized I can't control what anyone else thinks about me. I can't control, what you think about me, what anyone else out there thinks about me. The only thing I can control is me.
Yeah.
And when I accepted that, and I accepted that, the only thing I can do is live my life by my truths and my beliefs, and try to be the best version of me that I can be,
Hmm.
and stop worrying about everyone else. It was like this huge weight was just taken off of me. I just, I,
Yeah.
the anxiety and the depression and everything just kind of went away when I stopped giving a damn about what everyone else thought.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 I could see that. And you mentioned growing up in the strict household and having to live by certain values and be a certain way in order to be accepted in that household, at least by your perception. And when you finally were able to let go, like you said, of some things that need to be a certain way, or worry about what other people were thinking of you, was there? Let me ask this: what could you not be growing up? What were you not allowed to be?
Oh, I grew up in a really strict Christian household, just to clarify that. And
Yeah.
as I got older, around 15, I started just questioning, Christianity, whether that was my path, whether that was, what I truly believed. And man, if I looked into anything else, I was dealing with demonic forces. I was dealing with, Satanism and everything else. I mean, it was just, looking into anything like Buddhism or anything like that, any other belief systems. Oh,
Mm.
I was in bed with the devil. It was evil.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't able to fully express my own spiritual path and my own spiritual beliefs, or even given the option to explore what they were. I was told what they were. And
Yeah.
when the thing is, I worked at a campgrounds when I was 15. I was a junior counselor at a summer camp, and I've told this story before a few times. It started off by one of the counselors handed me the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which has very little to do with Zen and even less to do with motorcycle maintenance. But it touched just enough on metaphysics to spark an interest.
Mhm.
And so my next book that I picked up was Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. And that was really what I consider my introduction into the realm of metaphysics and the path of the mystic. And that started opening up my mind in a different way of going, what they teach in church isn't, that's not it. That's not all. There's more out there. It's not, show up to service 3 or 4 times a week, pay your tithes, say your prayers, live by this moral code, and you're going to go to heaven.
Yeah.
Or if you don't, you're going to hell. And so it was one of those things that I'm like, there's more out there. There's deeper beliefs. There's deeper systems out there, and I wasn't happy. And I grew up. This is the thing. This is the kicker. I grew up in the church, being told from a very young age that it was prophesied and ordained that I was going to become a powerful man of God, and that I was meant to become a preacher. And I heard that day in and day out from, 5 years old on. We'd go to church. There'd be people that come and give prophetic messages on the fact that I'm supposed to become this powerful man of God. I'm supposed to be this preacher. I'm supposed to be this spiritual leader. And so I'm being told that this is my destiny. And at the whole time I'm sitting there going, hold on, didn't God give us free will? But yet I'm being told I don't have any choice. This is what I'm supposed to do. And so I was being more or less groomed to assume that role, and groomed to become a pastor and a preacher in a church from a very young age. And it didn't allow me to just find my own path. Mm-hmm. And so, in time, I started finding it and stuff, and, I had to be very careful because I couldn't bring books on metaphysics into the house and mom and dad see them, or they would lose their mind. Yeah. I was bringing in books that were cursed and demonic, and bringing in demons into the house and everything else, I remember when I was 18, I was still living at home, but I had met up with a group of buddies at the job I had, and they had introduced me into playing Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. And that was a whole different level there in the house. I was told I couldn't do this, which was a game that I enjoyed. I had fun with it, and I had a good time hanging out with my friends. We wasn't doing anything bad. We wasn't doing anything wrong, but I was told I couldn't do that because it was evil.
Right.
So those are just examples of things within the house that I was told, I couldn't do, and I couldn't express. I couldn't really explore anything outside of this path that they had laid out for me.
Right.
And so I just, of course, what do you do when that's the way it is? You rebel.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, like you said, you repress a lot of it too. I mean, from what I'm hearing, it's like you weren't a child is naturally pretty curious, and you might have even been extra curious by your nature.
Oh yeah,
right? And exploratory.
Absolutely.
And so it wasn't just that you had to be a Christian. It was you can't even be curious or inquisitive or ask questions. Like, your whole curiosity was shoved into the shadow by your family, by your parents. So if a curious by nature person like you is not allowed to be who they are to that core level, I can imagine how that might manifest later on in some pretty nasty symptoms, like you said you had.
Oh yeah, it did end up to the point to where, you know, I tried living life by their standard. I tried to do it their way. You know, I thought, okay, well, I'll just go to church, and I even became a youth pastor at one church, and then things didn't work out with that church. Just it was just me and the pastor just were butting heads constantly, and next thing I know, I moved on to a different church and became an associate youth pastor there for a while, and then one day I just woke up and I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. That's it. I'm over this. I feel like I'm living a lie, and it just wasn't my path.
Yeah.
And so I just started off on my own studies and diving deeper, and I've studied. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't go take uh, classes or courses on religion or anything like that. I just started studying every religion in the world that I could find, and seeing what worked, what I liked, what made sense to me. And come to find out, there's bits and parts of all of them, even Christianity, that make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it took me a long time, and it's funny because I did run into a group of people that were called I when I was working at the campgrounds, I actually done a weekend retreat for a Unitarian church, the Universal Unitarian Church, and that was my first introduction into a church. It's like, oh yeah, we don't care what your spiritual beliefs are. We don't care if you're Muslim or you're Hindu or you're Buddhist or you're Christian or whatever your spiritual beliefs are. It's all good. And
That must have felt nice.
that just kind of opened up this path of, oh my God, this exists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of started, that honestly kind of started pulling some of that stuff back out of the shadows at that point in time, going, I can explore this. I don't have to hide this. I don't have to repress these things. I can look into these things, and there's groups of people that says, hey, this is all cool.
Yeah. You could own that part of your shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which honestly, it wasn't even part of my shadow. It was just a part of me that I was forced to push into the shadows because it
Yeah.
wasn't acceptable within my family and the community that I lived in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like you said, it's a part of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it always is. It always is. And it's also an interesting dynamic because this is usually within the context of at least at the beginning within the family that we grow up in, and so we see we see kids either take usually one of two paths. It's like, I'm going to align with the family, and I'm going to be the good boy or girl, and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do and push it in the shadow, or I'm just going to totally rebel and be the black sheep of the family, or sometimes even go too far and just like uh, identify wholly with the shadow and be like, I am all this bad stuff and I'm not even the good at all.
Right.
People take these two extremes oftentimes.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting.
I was gonna say, for me, it I tried being the good boy for the family. I tried to fit in. I tried to play by their rules.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out that just didn't work for me. And, if because that didn't work for me, I'm the black sheep in the family, then oh well, I'm the black sheep in the family, but I'm living by my own personal truths. And, if that's a problem, then like I said, I got to the point to where I stopped worrying about what other people thought. And I
Hmm.
started living my life for me on my terms, on what made me feel good, what my beliefs were, what fit within my personal realm, rather than trying to fit into what everyone else wanted me to be.
Yeah, yeah, that's freeing. And a lot of times it's another way that this can, at least for me, that stuff can get shoved into the shadow. It's just like, even at a more basic level, just character traits. Not even, it doesn't even have to be a belief, but like for me, it was introversion or just even being shy.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be something your family explicitly tells you not to be, like don't be shy. I just witnessed, my dad was also a very shy person, and I witnessed it, and I witnessed conflict in the marriage with my mom. I witnessed him, he didn't really have social skills, let's just say that. And so my brain linked up that that was the cause of all of the pain and the conflict, was his shyness. And I'm that way by nature too. I'm introverted by nature as well. But somehow I linked up that that was not something that I was. That's a flaw. That's a character flaw. That's a weakness that you need to get rid of. You need to remove it. Like you need to fix it. You need to force yourself to be this other person. So my natural introversion became part of my shadow, and that I spent probably a decade of my life trying to purge it, trying to be another person, like trying to, and growth comes out of that. Like I built social skills, and I built the ability to connect with others that I really needed. And then I kind of came full circle, and I realized actually, like, that introversion is part of my strength. It's part of what makes me a good listener. It's part of what makes me able to reflect and like think really deeply. And it's not, it's no longer in my shadow, even though I still have it. It's just that it's who I am, and I've owned it. Right. So there's a lot of different ways shit gets shoved in there.
Absolutely. I mean, like even along that lines, I was the opposite of you. I was an extrovert. I was always talkative, always wanting to talk with people. Wanting to be involved in conversations and discussions, and like you said, I was always really curious. So I wanted to jump in and learn. And what better way than jumping in a conversation with the adults and learning what the adults are saying, because they're older than you, they've got more experiences, they know things, and that's who you learn from. And there was a certain mentality, not so much with my parents, but more my grandparents, of the kids should be seen and not heard type ordeal. Kids just need to sit there and be quiet and, let the adults do what the adults are doing, and, or go outside and play, if you're going to be noisy, go elsewhere. Don't get involved in these conversations. And so that was one of those things I was constantly battling back and forth with, because there was part of me that just, if my grandpa on my dad's side owned a garage. And so if they was working on cars in the garage, I was interested in what they was doing. So I'd want to go in there and talk with the guys who were working, ask them what they was doing. But I was in the way. Get out of here. Go away. Yeah. We're working. We've got stuff to do. And, it was one of those things that I just, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not welcome there. And so it got to be one of those things that I did become really secluded more so as a teenager and spent just a lot of time to myself. And I'd spend time reading books. I still had that curiosity. I still wanted to learn things. I still wanted to know things. So I would spend my time with my nose stuck in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and less time around other people because, when I was going out and trying to have these conversations with adults, they didn't want to have these conversations because I was a kid.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't take much when you're that age for your brain to learn, I can't do this. I can't be this way. It's not going to be acceptable. It's going to be a risk to my safety or my belonging or my respect. And so, which is why we all have these shadows, is because none of us have perfect parents and they all have their own.
Right.
And so at some point they're going to not respond the way you need to. They're going to get angry with you. They're going to say one thing and then do another. They're going to not give you the attention that you need. They're going to criticize you. And then, of course, it runs the whole spectrum from best intentions all the way to abuse. But even in the most loving, attentive family, they're still going to fuck up, and you're still going to link things up in your mind that you're not allowed to be, you're not allowed to express. You're going to have a shadow. It doesn't matter how happy your childhood is.
Well, that goes on even then through adulthood with families and stuff too. I mean, I've experienced with my family, and I experienced things with my parents telling me, oh, well, you shouldn't do that because you never follow through with things. It's not true. There's a lot of things I followed through with. When I find something that I don't like, I'm not going to continue doing something I don't like or I don't enjoy. So yes, those things I'll stop. I had a bad marriage, and then after, I got divorced, and then after that, I hooked up with a lady that, that went bad. And so when I reconnected with a really dear friend of mine from school, and me and her, started getting romantic interest and stuff in each other. And it's a long distance relationship. She lives several states away right now and stuff. But I was told, well, don't get into this. It's just going to end bad. None of your relationships are good. They all fail. Just don't even get involved. And I'm sitting here looking at my parents, who have been together for, at that point in time, had been together for 60 years. They had been married 58 of those 60 years. Mm-hmm. And they're telling me, don't get into a relationship because it's going to be bad, because I've had some bad experiences in the past. Mm-hmm. And so every single one of my relationships now are going to be horrible, be bad, be terrible. And that was the expectation that they was trying to place upon me. Mm-hmm. And so I could have accepted that, or what I did in this case was I told him, I said, you know what, it's my life, it's my choice, it's my decision. I really care for this lady. I want to be with her, and I'm going to do whatever it takes for me and her to be together and to have the relationship that we desire.
Mm-hmm. Was there? Oh, go ahead. You're gonna say something?
I was about ready to say I have no idea why he's being so barky tonight. He usually is not.
You must know you're filming.
Usually during the shows, he just lays down and he's really quiet. Come here. But go ahead.
Was there a moment of fear or hesitation in that thought process of like, oh shit, maybe it is going to go bad because of the other ones?
No, it's one of those things that with this relationship, just the connection. It was one of those things that the connection is just. it's different than what it has been with any of the other relationships. So I just had no doubts, and you know, we've had our struggles in this relationship. I mean, especially doing things long distance currently, which we're working to resolve that in time. But she's got things that she's wanting to work on and get into place and take care of before we take it to more advanced levels and stuff.
Yeah.
Before we move in together and start, kind of settling down to have our life together and stuff. But it's one of those things that she's in the process of doing her own shadow work, and she's wanting to do that so that when we do go deeper into that relationship, she's not bringing her own issues and problems and stuff that she hasn't worked on and resolved and dealt with into our relationship, making that an issue, which
Hmm.
to me that's a beautiful thing, and I'm fully supportive of that.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful thing, and that while we're talking about relationships, I it was this thought came across my mind today, and I realized, what, like there's different ways you can do shadow work. There's conceptual techniques, there's plant medicines, there's different sort of visualizations and journaling, and also a lot of different ways you can do it. But to me, there's no faster route to doing shadow work than a relationship, than a committed relationship. Like, it will force you, maybe having kids too, but
It's going to
it
force you to
will,
look at things in a real serious nature real quick.
it will, it'll force you to look at things in yourself. It'll force them to look at things in their self. And I came across something I was reading about, um, kind of the dynamic that happens in people when they're together. And I was reading it, and then I saw, yes, this is exactly what is happening, or what has happened in my relationship. But essentially, one person will project their shadow onto the partner, some quality that they don't allow themselves to express, and then get upset with it and like experience it as if it is being a character trait of the other person, when really it is like something that they are not owning within themselves. So I'll give you a concrete example, like somebody who never gets angry, like myself. Like, I have anger, uh, or have had anger that I needed to be able to express in a healthy way, and like own being able to be angry and it being okay, not having to to hurt anybody with my anger, but also being able to express it.
Right.
And so in my relationship, I have noticed that I would subtly do things to provoke the anger of my partner, so that I'm able to almost use her as a proxy to like process my own anger, which is not the healthy way to go about it, but it's
Right.
like it's kind of something that we do subconsciously. And I read this and I'm like, yeah, I think I actually see that happening quite a bit. Like, I don't really get angry, but I'm pretty good at provoking it, like in my partner.
Right. I kind of seen that in my marriage, from some of the aspects of my ex-wife.
Hmm.
She even in our marriage, she even told me, she said the only emotion that she feels like she can show is anger. And for the most of our marriage, that was the only emotion she ever would show, was anger. There was, some joy and happiness and stuff in there at times, but even when she started to get too happy, she would pull back.
Hmm.
And it was like she was scared to be happy.
Right.
And but she would do things to invoke other emotions out of me.
Yeah.
And she would do that on purpose, and you could tell she was doing it on purpose, and it eventually ended up being a thing that kind of drove us apart, because I told her, she had things that she had to work on, and she just blatantly refused, and it became a very toxic relationship. It became a very emotionally abusive relationship, because she would try to get different emotional responses out of me, of getting me upset, of making me sad, of sorrow and stuff like that, on
Mm.
purpose, because she wouldn't allow herself to experience those.
Yeah. Yeah. A perfect example of that. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just, it got to a point where it just drove us apart, and that was ultimately the end of our relationship.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate now to have somebody who's also very introspective and uh, does her own work. Not the work I say she needs to do, but like she's introspective. We're on similar paths, and like we both take responsibility for uh, our part in things and for what we're not owning. And but we're also a good we could be a gentle kind of mirror
Right.
if we do it compassionately and kindly and communicating in a certain way. We can hold up a little mirror to say like this is what you're doing, just so you
Right.
know.
Right. And see, that's how it is with the lady I'm with right now too.
Yeah.
And we, like I said, we've got our challenges and stuff, and there's different things going on within the relationship that makes it a little difficult. And being 14-hour drive from each other is one of them. And it's not easy to just
Mm-hmm.
hop a flight right now and fly a couple hours and go spend time with each other, with everything of the state of the world as it is today,
Yeah.
and stuff. And so it's one of those things that you know we we spend a lot of time in more conversation, than being in physical presence of each other. So we've kind of been able to do that with one another. When she's going through something, or she's struggling with something, or there's something coming up, I can say, "Hey, honey, do you maybe need to look at this?" And she'll do the same thing with me. Recently, I was looking at diving into some training, and she's like, "Well," she goes, "I know you'll be really good at this training." She goes, "I'm supportive of you, and I'll back you in this training however you want." She goes, "But I don't think now's the right time for you to do it." And she brought up a list of reasons, of things that was going on. And she said, "And I think these are why you need to hold off for a little bit before you start diving into this deeper training." And it wasn't that she was trying to deter me from it. She was bringing up very valid, very poignant reasons of things that could end up causing me to have more problems and frustrations, and necessarily not get all I need to out of the training, because of
Mm-hmm.
situations that was going on in life at that point in time. And
Mm-hmm.
so she was able to be that sounding board and just say, "Hey, I love you, I care for you. Stop and think, this is what's going on. Maybe now's not the time to do this."
Interesting. And so when she was able to reflect that to you in a loving way, were you able to look and see maybe something that was driving you to want to do this training now, even though it necessarily wasn't the best thing for you at this moment in time?
Oh, I'm one of those people that I want, like I said, I'm curious by nature, and I
Mm-hmm.
have just a thirst for knowledge. And so
Yeah.
it's, training, something that will dive deeper, something that can give me more knowledge, more skills, more this, more that,
Yeah.
and so there's times where I just dive into things because I want to get that knowledge. I want to get that wisdom. I want to get that experience and be able to have that as part of my repertoire.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, she brought up some very important things, some of the health issues that I've been dealing with lately. She's, maybe this isn't the best time to be trying to dedicate yourself to something that's going to be taking a lot of your time and a lot of your focus and a lot of your energy. That if, something comes up health-wise that pulls you away from it is going to cause you to suffer in your training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, it was one of those things that as she said this, I was going, she's exactly right. She's spot on. And the funny thing is, I was even having some doubts myself about doing the training at the time, but I couldn't figure out why. I just knew there was something there, but I couldn't figure out 100% why. And that's the main reason why I didn't just jump on it and start right away. And I went to her and we had a conversation, and, she brought up these reasons, and I went, oh, okay, well, that makes perfect sense.
So maybe you couldn't put your finger on it, like you said, but you knew that you needed to take care of you.
Right.
Before you invested in this. But something about you was like, something about your psyche was saying, no, you don't need to take care of yourself. You're not that important. You got to do this training right now.
Well,
your health can wait.
Yeah, it was part of me was saying, as I'm diving down this path, as I'm starting to embrace this calling, that I need to get training. I need to go deeper. I need to have more tools that I can offer to those that I'm working with. And so getting this training was a way that I saw doing that. But also at the same time, like you said, I've got to take care of myself because, if I'm depleted, I can't do anything to help anyone else.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, this training will also give me more aspects of things that I can bring to the show when I do the show, and on top of all the other aspects of different things that I work in with people and stuff. And one of the things that she told me is, I've got a 27 essay question ministerial exam sitting out on my table in my front room right now that I need to complete.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to get ordained within the branch of the Oklahoma Native American Church that I belong to. I'm part of the Peaceful Mountain Way branch out of Kentucky, and our chief minister Demian Gover, who Demian's been on the show many times. People who watch the show will know who Demian is. Demian requires anyone that is going to get ordained through his branch to do this exam. And it's one of those things that there's no right or wrong answers to these questions. It's more about self-introspection and making sure that you're ready and prepared to do the work that comes along with being an ordained minister. It's not just, hey, look, I got ordained in this church and I've got this title and now I can marry people. No, that's not what he's looking for. He's looking for spiritual leaders, people that can be there to help support the community and stuff and those around them in that aspect. And that's part of what this exam is. And, it's one of those things that I realized, oh yeah, I still have that to do, which I started on, but here I was getting ready to dive into a whole different level of training, and I still needed to do that before it really wasn't that I had to do one before the other, but I should finish one thing before I start diving into trying to tackle 3 or 4 different things at once. And that can be a bad trait that I do have, where I'll try to tackle way too many things at once. It's like, oh no, I
Mhm.
can read 4 different books on, 4 different subjects and keep it all
Mhm.
separate it and know what I'm talking about, and next thing I know, I'm confusing one book with another book, and
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, it's just, and I think part of that does go back to some of the things of where I wanted to learn things and people kind of held me back, that I have just this overwhelming desire to gain as much knowledge as I can.
Right. It goes all the way back to that. Is there? What do you see any of that
Lay down.
fear still there, kind of driving the need to do all of it at once? Like I can't just do one course. I can't just do one. I have to do four. I have to do
I,
them all, and I have to do them right now.
I think more so these days, it's, you know, I'm 43 years old. I've put this off for so long, and I'm trying to make up for lost time where I should have been working on this stuff long ago.
Hmm.
And there was a point in time where I did kind of run away from this because of, I knew my path, but there was part of me that just, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do
Yeah.
something else. I wanted to do anything but this. I wanted to go down other avenues or other ventures and not do this. And then there's part of time where I fell into a really deep depression, and I just didn't give a crap about doing anything.
Hmm.
And so now there's part of me that feels like I have to make up for lost time.
Yeah. But what if you don't?
Oh, I've got the next lifetime to catch up. Yeah. There, it's one of those things that I'll get done what I get done. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how I look at it. And the funny thing is, there's even a bigger part of me that's like that training that I was talking about. It was something I was going to start, about a month ago, and that I was looking at starting about a month ago. And in all reality, even before, and it was because an opportunity came up to go ahead and start it then.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, well, I need to jump at this opportunity. I got the opportunity to do this now. But in my mind, I had been even thinking, this would be a good thing for me to be focused on during the winter months when it's kind of cold outside and everything's, I'm more shut down, and I can just kind of, stay inside and focus in with everything and just kind of focus in on these studies,
Uh-huh.
which, is a good time of year to focus in on those kind of things.
Yeah. It seems like we always have the wise answer within us, and every time I feel like I'm being driven to do something because I need to do it. I have to do it. Like if I don't do it, something bad will happen. Versus like this is right for me right now. That's usually a red flag that there's some element of my shadow that is barking. You
Yeah.
know, that's speaking to me. That's trying to compel me to do something.
Yeah, and truth be told, if I had started that training and along with everything else going on right now, I would not have given it the attention that it truly needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that.
Yeah.
It just would not have gotten the attention and the focus that it truly needs. And that's a big thing that my partner brought up. She said you've got to be able, because she understands what that training is. She understands the depth and the seriousness of it. And she said you have got to be able to fully commit and focus into it when you start to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. So you knew what the right thing is.
Yeah.
You know what the right thing is. Yeah. Is there Is there one area where you're explicitly focused right now on doing shadow work on something, on some specific piece?
Honestly, I think a big thing that I've been working on is letting go of some of the past resentments that I've had from previous relationships
Yeah.
and different issues and problems from previous relationships so that I don't pull them in to this relationship. I know this relationship. I know the struggles and everything that we have with it because some of the challenges we face, and we don't always get to communicate as much as we would like at times, just because I'm busy with a lot of things I've got going on. She's got kids and job and everything else, and she's super busy. Will you stop being so barky tonight? Sorry. And so there's a point in time where we sometimes we just don't connect, and it may, depending on what's going on, it may be several days where we just struggle to connect more than an occasional text message here or there. And
Hmm.
there'll be part of me, because in my marriage, my ex would stop talking to me for days on end,
Hmm.
and it was just part of her emotional manipulation.
Hmm.
And so there'll be part of me is when we don't talk, and it's just like, hold on, is what's going on, and it would kind of dredge up some of those old feelings. And I know that's not what's going on. I know that's not what's going on at all. But it would still dredge up some of those old feelings and those old emotions. And it's just, that's one of those things that I'm just working on trying to get over and stop dealing with those kind of issues. Because that's not what's going on in this relationship. And she doesn't deserve for me to be pulling in those aspects of someone else that someone else done into our relationship and projecting them onto her.
Hmm. And the projection specifically is the fear, like that you are either trying to manipulate me or you are losing interest in me. Those types of voices,
Right,
those types of stories.
right, and yeah, and it really does come down to that. It comes down to the fear of not so much the manipulation, but it comes down to, oh well, I guess she's not interested. I guess and because that's how things went with my ex towards the end of the marriage. It was, she just really shut down towards the end of it. And I mean, shoot, we would go
Hmm.
days on end without talking just because she didn't care. And if I tried to talk to her, she would just shut everything down. I mean, just totally, completely, I mean, just cold. And you know and so when we don't get to communicate at times, it makes me think of, oh, is this what's happening now?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in all honesty, if I stop and I slow down and I think about it, it's like, okay, well, she's got this going on with her job, she's got this going on with a kid, she's got this going on with other aspects of her life and stuff. So yeah, there's going to be times where we may not be able to make time for a call, and she deals with health issues as well. So sometimes those take over, and she deals with same health issues as some of the things I deal with. We both have fibromyalgia, and so I know the pain issues that come along with that, and how it can zap you and drain you and take your energy away.
Hmm.
And it, and sometimes at the end of the day, you don't want to get on the phone call and talk with anyone. All you want to do is just lay down and rest.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can't even make a call if you want to. You have to lay down and rest. Your body is demanding it.
Yeah. So
And
you know all that stuff
yeah,
rationally.
yeah.
You know all that
It,
stuff rationally.
but it's some of those insecurities.
Hmm.
Let's just call them for what they are. They're insecurities that I have from some of the past relationships that I just need to work on, and that's honestly what I'm focusing and working on now, because I don't need to bring those insecurities into this relationship. She doesn't deserve them.
Right. Yeah, you clearly see that. And when those fears are coming up, and you might have a thought of, what if she's losing interest? Is there a why there, like, or a because there? Like, she might be losing interest because of something about me specifically. Is there anything specific that might come up in
Um,
one of those moments of fear?
not so much as anything specific. I mean, the I think it just goes back to that whole, you know, my ex kind of broke off communication right before, you know, things ended.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was one of those things. One of the last things I said to her was, what can I do to fix us? And she said, oh, in my opinion, there is no more us. You know, and so
Mm.
that's kind of how our relationship came to an end. And so it was just, and it was blindsided. You know, she hadn't really said, hey, I don't think that we're working out. She was just shutting down. And then when I brought up, you know, trying to address that issue, she just said, oh yeah, well, you know. And she even told me, she said, I've felt this way for several months now. And I'm like, well, why didn't you say something sooner? She said, oh, I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And you know, it was one of those things.
Yeah. And then the only reason I'm asking is because, at least when we're talking about finding what's still there in that shadow where we need to do the work, right? Like, the common fear that's beneath all of it for all of our insecurities, doesn't matter what the situation is that we're not enough in some way. Like, we're not good enough to be loved as we are, right? And that's the root fear. And then on top of it, it's usually what enough means in this situation. Like, what am I not enough of? Like, am I not, whatever insecurity we formed when we were a little kid, right? Like, what am I doing wrong that makes me not enough? Or what am I not doing enough of that makes me not enough?
I'm not 100% sure that any. I'm if there is something along those lines there, I haven't identified it yet.
Yeah.
You know, and it may be something I just haven't identified. I think it's just I'm relating the lack of communication at times to the way things happened in that relationship when it was coming to an end. And
Yeah.
so just kind of draw the parallels, which like I said, I know it's not true with what's going on and stuff. And you know, when we do talk, you know, and I've even brought up these things with her and talked about it with her and stuff, and let her know, you know, at times I've felt that way, and she reassures me that's not what's going on. And
Yeah.
I tell her, you know, I know, but I mean, it's one of the things that with her I can be open and have these conversations where in past relationships I had not been able to, and that's one of the things that just brings about the it just confirms to me that I'm in the right relationship,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I can have that kind of open communication without any kind of hurt or resentment or anyone, you know, getting upset because we're talking about these things.
Yeah. So rather than it kind of growing your shadow, you're in one where it's shrinking, if anything, or not growing. More shit isn't being shoved in there because
Right.
you're able to share. I'm afraid. I'm feeling afraid because XYZ. I know it's not true. I know it's irrational, but I'm feeling afraid. And she's able to listen to you compassionately and say, "Oh, I understand. This is what's happening, reassure you, and then that fear doesn't get shoved into the shadow, and other shit doesn't get shoved into the shadow because you guys are able to discuss it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, being in a relationship will make you do that shadow work. It will make you look at those things. And that's an aspect of how this relationship has made me look at those things. I didn't realize until that started going on that I was still harboring those kind of feelings, and the the whole idea of not being in communication as often as we would bring up the whole fear of, oh my god, this is going to be over, it's coming to an end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what about different ways that we could do some of this work? When we talk a lot about it through the relationship lens, it kind of forces you to do it, like forces you to introspect. What about some of the other intentional ways that you've said about doing this type of work? Some of the other tools that you use, some of the other methods.
Well, I mean, part of it's mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
Just that sitting alone with yourself, taking that deep look at yourself, and looking at, like you said, those shadow aspects, those parts of you that you don't like other people to necessarily see, and coming to terms with them that they are part of you, but how do you handle those being part of you? And some of it's just sitting with them and coming to terms with them that's just part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that my ex brought up was, I'm an extremely emotional person. I'm very in touch with my emotions. If I'm upset, you're gonna know it. If I'm sad, you're gonna know it. If I don't hide my emotions. And she would mock me for that, because she was raised in a family where you don't show emotions, and pretty much the only emotion that they did show was either anger, or it was okay to be happy now and then.
Yeah.
But even that was done, and it was like they couldn't be too happy.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
had to have a limit on it. And so it was one of those things, because I was so in touch with my emotions. If I was really upset, if I was really sad over something, I would cry, and I wouldn't hold that back. And she would mock and make fun of me for it. And it's one of those things that at a certain point in time, when you have people constantly coming at you from that, and I had it a lot through my life and stuff, growing up and stuff. I was the same way. And I got told, oh, you need to not do that. That's not how a man's supposed to act at times.
Yeah.
You suck it up. You're not supposed to show that's not a manly emotion to show.
The only emotion men are allowed to show is pretty much anger.
Yeah, and that is such a horrible way that our society has confined men and their emotions. And I saw it recently when my mother passed away this past winter. My father was, I mean, like I said, they were together 60 years. And during that time, they could probably count on their hands how many nights they spent apart from each other in that 60 years.
Uh-huh.
And when mom was in the hospital and we knew it was just a matter of time, hours or days, Dad did not want the guys. He didn't want myself, my brother, or any of my nephews around him when he was breaking down, when he was crying, when he was upset. It was okay for the girls to be there. It was okay for my sisters or my nieces to be there. But he couldn't show that emotional vulnerability around the guys because that's not how a man's supposed to act.
Yeah.
He couldn't let that down. And I told Dad, I said, I told him at one point in time, I said, you pushing me away and keeping me from being able to be there with the family and stuff during these final hours because you're afraid for me to see you cry is doing more harm than me seeing you cry.
Yeah.
And that's a natural reaction and emotion. I would be worried if you wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wasn't upset, if you wasn't in tears over your partner of 60 years, your wife of 58 years passing away, I would be worried.
Right.
Yeah. And it got to a point to where towards during the funeral services and some of the family get-togethers and gatherings afterwards, he stopped doing that, and he would just kind of openly break down around us and just kind of let it go. But he would try to collect himself as soon as possible. You could tell he was trying to control that, and to me, it's such a crime that society and culture has forced that mentality of what masculinity and the way a man is supposed to act has revolved around shutting down those emotional sides, and that you can't show those more vulnerable emotions, and that if you do show them, you're obviously weak. When in my opinion, showing those emotions and being vulnerable is actually a sign of strength.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, this is what we call like a collective shadow, right? It's not just one person's, but it's a whole gender. And actually, if you really look at it, at least in a masculine-dominated environment, traditionally masculine-dominated environments like many industries and workplaces, women are now trying. They're to do what they perceive that they need to do to advance. They're taking on this masculine disease, if you want to call it that. This masculine shadow. So it's not even just a man thing anymore. Of these things can't be feeling. That's why this is like such a huge part of my passion now. Is like, and not there's a lot of people doing this great work, but it's kind of like teaching, first of all, myself, and like I've had to educate myself on how to feel emotions, and teaching men how to do these things. Like once they get to the point where like, okay, I acknowledge that like this isn't going to be healthy, and it's going to only benefit me if I learn how to experience a wider range of emotions. But I don't know how to do it. Like it's not taught in school. I didn't learn it from my dad. Like my dad didn't learn it from his. So like, how the hell are we supposed to do it? We don't know how. And it is a skill, and it's a muscle. Like it's something that has to be practiced, like repeatedly, like over and over. And you do little baby steps and get further and further until you can experience these emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's getting to the point to where, like you said, our culture and society is saying, if you're gonna be successful, you can't show emotions. You can't. You just you just have to shut down and be a robot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And honestly, it's one of the worst things that I think our society could be teaching and telling people. And so the work that you're doing, I think, is absolutely important on doing things to let people know, hey, this is okay. This is how you do it. And myself and another guest of the show who has me and him have become very good friends. We're actually going to be working on putting together a men's group to try to address some of these exact issues that we've been talking about. Just because we see that these are such an issue and such a problem, and we need to offer these avenues for, you know, for men to be able to come out and say, hey, you know, I'm feeling this way, and be in an area where they can be accepted for that and know that it's all right, and they can show these emotions and they can show these feelings, and they can talk about the issues that is bothering them without judgment.
Without judgment. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, it feels so good to be able to do it. Like, at least I had the perception it was like, oh, it's just going to be all about like just only being expressing fear and crying a lot and being vulnerable only. But it's like all of them. Like, you get to feel your joy too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you can feel a wider range of everything, they all get expanded. So it's like, I'm a part of some of these groups where there'll be a ton of men on there. Maybe a couple of them are sharing something, and it doesn't matter if it's like they're really pissed and they need to scream because they don't know how to show their anger healthily, or they lost somebody and they just need to break down and be sad, or they're ashamed of something, or they're just like, they want to celebrate and they don't want to like scream and jump and like act like a little kid. Like, it is just so like cathartic and exhilarating just to witness it, not even to be the person sharing, but just to like have it impact you. Like, you feel yourself being able to tap into it yourself just by witnessing it. It's such powerful work.
Absolutely. I mean, it's when you see one person start to be able to open up that way, it makes everyone else realize it's okay to do that and to open up as well. And so that's why things like that's important. That's why it's important to, you know, not necessarily do this work one-on-one, but to do it in a group setting where people can, you know, and the thing is, and I imagine you've probably seen it before, everyone may be really shut down and really quiet and not saying anything, and then that first person that opens up starts a chain reaction.
Oh yeah.
And from there it's just kind of, you know, the floodgates of everything opens, and it just gets everything going.
Yeah, the vulnerability is the currency of trust. So like one person opens up, and then instantaneous trust is built, like with the whole group.
Yeah.
And it's just a symbol, like, by him exposing himself, I know that I can expose myself because he's not going to attack me or judge me. And like instant safety and respect and trust is built when one person does that.
Absolutely.
And then you get a whole room of guys doing this one after another, and it's just kind of this synergistic energy builds in the room, and in an hour's time frame you feel like you just went through 2 years of therapy. It could be really powerful stuff.
Yeah, and you know, we're talking about a men's group here, but you know, it's important for women to get together and do the same thing. And I do think that there really is an importance on men getting together and working with men on some of these aspects, and women getting together and working with women on some of these aspects, because it allows certain energies to be open and to flow. And while we all have both masculine and feminine energies within us, being able to openly identify and allow your primary energy to flow
Yeah. Yeah.
in a way where it's not going to be judged, and you're going to bring it into a healthy spot is really important. And honestly, a lot of my studies right now, my personal studies that I'm doing, is going in along the different aspects of the divine feminine and the divine masculine energies,
Oh yeah.
and what those energies look like, and the what traits and aspects those energies show and represent. And it's a part of my studies that are going in leading into starting this men's group, because one of the things that I want to address is the aspect of the divine, or the divine masculine energies versus what we see today as that toxic masculinity, which
Mm-hmm.
you hear the term toxic masculinity thrown around in culture and society so much,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't realize it goes well beyond just someone that's angry, someone that's shouting, someone that's just this pent up ball of rage. A lot of those toxic aspects can just be shutting down those emotions and not showing them or sharing them with the people around you.
Yeah.
And that can be toxic in and of itself. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's important for people to know and to learn how to be able to open up and show those different aspects of themselves. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I brought up something. I brought up something with my family, my parents, about 5-6 years ago. I'd been living out in California, and I had recently moved back to Ohio. And I was out the house, and I I told my parents, I said, "I love you guys. I'll see you later." And they both kind of turned and looked at me, kind of shocked. And they were like, "What'd you say?" I said, "I love you guys." I said, I'll see you guys later." I said, "I'm getting ready to leave." She said, Mom's who caught it. And she's like, "I don't think anyone's ever really said, 'I love you guys' like that." And I'm like, "Well," I said, "I grew up in this home, and I don't think I ever once heard the words 'I love you' from either of you."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "I'm not holding that against you. Don't think that that's something I'm holding against you." I said, "But you guys were raised to not show those kind of emotions by your parents, and they was raised that way by their parents and by their parents, and it was a generational thing that was passed down." And I just flat out told Mom, I said, I'm tired of it. I'm not going to continue that generational trend." I said,
Yeah.
that's something I'm going to stop. And from there on out, Mom started saying "I love you" to me pretty much every time we had a phone conversation, or I was leaving after visiting with them. And it became a commonplace thing for us.
That's
and
beautiful.
and it was one of those things that it just took it being said once to open up that door, and then to go, "Oh, well, it's not that I don't love you, I just never thought about saying it."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It was just implied, it was just meant that it was there. But then once it was said, it opened up this whole new avenue of things,
Yeah.
and showing more emotions, and because my family was raised, and you don't show those emotions unless you need to. It kind of even went for the women that way too. You show your emotions mainly in private, and I was never that person in the family ever.
Mm-hmm. See, shadow work didn't have to be complicated. You shined a light on just that one word, and just instantly obliterated that from being in that shadow. Now it's after that scene. Now it's commonplace.
Yeah,
It's gone forever.
yeah, and it's not weird. It's not, you know, strange. It's not creepy or awkward
Yeah,
or anything. It was just, you know, taking, a whole lot of, 30 seconds to say that, and then it opened up the door to about a 10-minute conversation,
hmm
and from there it was out of the shadows and dealt with.
it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife. It's a cultural thing too, and my wife is Chinese American, and in Chinese culture, it's not said very often either. Uh, I mean, she had to train her dad for, I think, years before he would say it on the phone. She finally broke it down. Like, sometimes it takes a little longer, but yeah, it can be done. The hardest nuts.
Absolutely.
And just tying the loop back on the last thing you were talking about too, with toxic masculinity, tying the loop back to the shadow. I mean, you could look at all the toxically masculine behaviors that are associated with that phrase as shadow projections, manifestations of the things that men aren't allowed to be, and so
Well,
they
I mean,
manifest in awful behaviors.
and that's absolutely what it is. It really is different shadow aspects that are manifesting into these traits that are being associated with, the toxic masculinity, and how men are reacting and behaving because they're not being allowed, honestly, to say it in the right way, they're not allowed to be men,
Yeah,
because culture has said this is how you're supposed to be. This is, it's honestly, I think a lot of it was born out of that Hollywood John Wayne mentality of you have
yeah,
to be this tough stoic guy, and you don't show emotions, you don't get upset, you don't cry, you got to be a tough guy, you got to, you know and the thing is, I was fed that as a kid too. When I was going through being bullied and stuff in school, I would come home upset, I'd come home crying, I'd come home, just emotionally a wreck because of what I was going through. And I would get fed to, well, you just need to be mentally tough, you need to be strong, you need to be this, you need to be that. And my father would put on Charles Bronson movies or Chuck Norris movies, or these kind of movies of these Hollywood figures portraying these really tough roles of where they're just these badasses with no emotion, and told I
yeah.
needed to be like that.
uh,
And
uh,
that's
all
not
the time.
real. That's
Right.
not, I mean, that's a character. It's that's not how these people are in real life. That's 90 minutes, an hour to 90 minutes, 2 hours of someone portraying a role, and that's just not what life is like.
Yeah, yeah. It's there was a lot of ingrained cultural uh, programming done. I do feel optimistic about the future. Um, there's I'm seeing more and more of it being at least talked about and brought into the open, so that men have opportunities to go and do this work, and it's becoming, men's work itself is becoming a little bit more mainstream, a little bit more um, acceptable. So I do think that we have seen the bottom of that valley, and that there's brighter days ahead there.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly think that's going on now too. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we got brighter days ahead of us, and it can only benefit the society and culture in a whole for those kind of toxic traits to be done away with, to just get rid of them. This is the role that a man is supposed to be set into. He's got to be tough, he's got to be this, he's got to be that. He can't cry, he can't show emotions unless it's anger. A man can't be afraid, he can't be scared, he can't, and it's these kinds of things that we've pushed into our society that I think has brought about a lot of the issues that we see affecting people. Like we take 18-year-old boys, send them off into the military, train them to go to war. They send them to war, they see horror, and then they're told that they can't show any emotions or feelings from that, or they're broken. And it's one of those things that we need to address how that's dealt with. We need to address how we work with people in that situation. And it's one of those issues. Like at one point in time, I was taking a bus trip, and I was traveling from Sacramento, California, out to Vegas to go do some work at a trade show. And one of the legs on the bus that I was on, I sat next to a Marine medic who was in what was it, Desert Storm, I believe, when they had that real bad attack in Fallujah. He was there. He was a medic in Fallujah that day. And,
Iraqi freedom, yeah.
Yes, during Iraqi freedom. And he ended up telling me that he ended up having to get discharged because he had PTSD, because he couldn't handle what he saw that day. It affected him to a point. And he told me he went and tried to work with the counselors there in the military and everything that they would provide for him. And me and him just sat down and we just talked. And I told him, I said, you saw people you cared for hurt and dying in horrible aspects, and friends of yours and everything. I said, you saw some really, really bad stuff during that time. I said, it makes perfect sense to me for you to be dealing with all these different emotions and stuff. I said, but you have been trained to shut these all down and not feel them. And I said, honestly, you need to be able to feel them. You need to be able to work through them. You need to not be hiding them and repressing them. I said, I understand that you have flashbacks and nightmares and stuff. And I said, that's something that is going to take time to work through. And I said, some of those aspects may never go away. And that's just the reality of that horrible situation that he was in. But I told him, I said, you was there as a medic. You was trying to help these people. You was trying to save these people. You was trying to heal these people. And I said, now it's time for you to focus on healing yourself. And focusing in on yourself and working through a lot of these feelings and these emotions. And we became friends. We talked for a while. We stayed in contact through social media and stuff for a while. And then I've lost contact with him throughout the years and stuff. He went his own way, and I honestly don't know what happened to him at this point in time. But he was doing better through actually starting to not bottle all that stuff up, because that's how he was dealing with it. He was just
Yeah.
trying to lock it all down and trying to hold it all down and not allow it to flow. And, he even kind of broke down on the bus trip and stuff while we was talking, because I gave him the opportunity to be vulnerable. I gave him the opportunity to be open. I gave him the opportunity to say, hey, the stuff that you're being told is wrong to feel, it's okay to feel that.
Yeah, it's necessary. It's necessary.
And to me, that's part of the healing process.
Yeah. I mean, that's the first step in the healing process, and at the very least also not compounding the injury by adding shame on top of it.
Right.
And it helps to have if you can have at least a framework to experience emotions as a baseline, just in a normal day-to-day way, then it's not going to prevent PTSD. I mean, if you experience an unresolved trauma from something like war, it's still going to have to be healed and worked through, but at least you have a baseline of how to even just feel things on a normal level.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's the applications are endless for doing shadow work, and it never ends. It's basically your life's work.
Oh, absolutely.
Getting to know who you are and what you are, and then getting to love who and what you are. That work never ends. So it's everything. You either do the shadow work or it does its work on you.
Right. I mean, it like you said, and we talked about it at the top of the show. It's if you don't do this work, if you don't bring these things that's in the shadow to light and work on them, they're just going to sit there and they're going to fester, and they're going to become like an infection that's just going to cause you problems in all aspects of your life. And they're going to infect your relationship, they're going to affect your work life, they're going to affect your day-to-day life, and it can come down in many different aspects. It can come as depression, anxiety, anger issues, just resentments, and all kinds of different aspects that just causes you struggles through life, period.
Yeah. And they knock, and if you don't answer the door, they just knock louder and louder, which usually is in a more and more painful way.
And if you still don't answer the door, they're going to kick the door down and get right in your face.
Yeah. So might as well deal with them when they're medium-sized monsters instead of Godzilla-sized monsters.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is a fun conversation. I mean, it's like you could talk about it for hours.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those things that with the shadow work, like you said, you can address it when they're, smaller issues and smaller monsters, or you can let them get, Godzilla-sized monsters. But even if they do get to Godzilla-sized monsters, it's not impossible to take care of it. It's not impossible to deal with it. If you've got an issue that's grown to that point, you can still do the work and you can slay that beast. You can bring it down.
Yeah.
And while you may not kill it, that may not go away. It may not be something that's gone. It's at least something that becomes an aspect that you can manage and deal with in your life. It's a part of you that you don't have to feel bad about, you don't have to resent, you don't have to hate, there's all kinds of levels of different things that can go into shadow work. And we haven't even barely touched on the tip of all the different aspects of shadow work. The different kinds of issues that can be talked about as shadow work. We just kind of just really touched on the topic and not even really dove super super deep into it, because there's a whole, I mean, Carl Jung made a big part of his career on dealing with shadow work and talking about shadow work and different aspects of it and stuff. He was really big on shadow work.
It was kind of his life's work in a way. It was just his. I mean, he created it, coined the term, and then it was his fascination through most of his professional life.
Yeah, and I mean, just look at the field of work that he left. I mean, it's massive.
One book recommendation I would make to anybody who's interested. I think it's called Owning the Shadow, Meeting the Shadow. It's called Meeting the Shadow by Connie. Well, it's actually like an anthology. It is a collection of 60 or so short excerpts, essays, excerpts from articles, full articles by all different authors, and she curated it basically, so you can go in there, you can look at the shadow through each different lenses, like a societal lens, like through religion, through spirituality, even like there's spiritual manifestations of the shadow, through the family, through relationships, through politics, whatever you want, and you can go see how it manifests in that lens, through that lens, and then like what can be done about it through that lens. So that's a really good resource.
That sounds like a great book. I'm definitely going to pick that up and dive in through it and stuff. and that's the thing. There's so many different ways that shadow work manifests, and there's different ways of looking at it. And honestly, shadow work is in every aspect of our life. Like you said, the spiritual, the religion, the family, the personal, the relationships, the political aspects. Every part of life has shadow work involved in it. And unless you're willing to get in there and do that, there's going to be
consequences.
There's going to be consequences, and there's going to be things that are going to haunt you if you don't get in there and do that work.
And us, it's going to haunt all of us, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's all our job, and it could be fun too. It's like having a part of you that you were always ashamed of, and then one day realizing that you love that part of you. Not just that it's okay, but that you actually love it. That's your favorite part about yourself is a game changer. I mean, that changes your life.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's worth it. It's worth it.
But so we've been going for about an hour and 43 minutes. Is there anything? I mean, I try to keep the show to 2 hours, so we've got about 15 minutes to go. A little longer than that. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up the show for the evening? I know it's getting really late there for you now too.
Yeah, no. Hopefully, I'm not slurring my words too bad. But
no, you've been perfectly fine. No, I just know it's late for you, and so I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good spot. I feel like it's a good wrapping point. Like I said, like because it touches on so many areas, we could do a deep dive in each one of them. Maybe there's a part 2, but
there might be like a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, we could look at individual elements of it individually or specific applications of it. Yeah, but I feel like that's a good 5,000 foot view of what it is and like why it actually matters and why it's happening, whether we want to be conscious of it or not.
Right.
It's part of our life.
Well, Greg, I definitely invite you to come back on the show again. If you want to dive deeper into this subject, we definitely can.
Yeah.
If you want to dive deeper into individual aspects of it, that's something that we can definitely talk about and work on for a future show. Um, but I do want to thank you for coming on tonight and spending time with us and talking about shadow work with us and taking time out of your day and away from your family and everything to spend here with us and having this conversation.
Oh, thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's fun talking to you. You've got an interesting path, an interesting life. You're kind of a unique character. So it's fun
I,
talking to you, man.
that just kind of reminded me of something. I had a pastor in one of the churches I went to. It said he told me the Bible said that we're supposed to have character, not be a character. I told him, I said, you can do both.
Right on. Yeah, you can do both.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so once again, thanks for being here. I do want to let people know on Tuesday the 27th at 7 p.m. We are going to have Gene Caller back. That was supposed to be on Thursday the 15th. We tried to get Gene in. There were some technical issues, so we've rescheduled for the 27th. And then on Thursday the 29th, Irina Rose is going to be on. She's going to be a guest, and she has changed her topic that she wanted to discuss. So I need to look up and see what that is. But I'll let you guys know what we're going to be talking about that night on Tuesday's show. And it's funny because the topic that she did want to discuss, we actually talked on it tonight. It was understanding your personal shadow through romantic relationships, and we touched on that already tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't know where to get started on how to do shadow work, just talk to your partner. Ask them what pisses you off, what pisses them off about you, and what pisses you off about them. There you go. That's all you need to do.
There's a good way to start your shadow work if you don't know where to start.
That's easy.
But Greg, thanks for being here tonight, man. It's been a great conversation, and we'll definitely talk soon. And everybody, thanks for joining us tonight on Breaking Reality. If you want to continue to get deeper into this group, I will, and with the show and stuff, I suggest you join the Discord server that I have for Breaking Reality. There's a link on Twitch that's down below in the panels that you can click the button there, and when this is up on YouTube, down in the description there will be a link there to join the Discord community. Discord is free. You can come in, join there, and we get into discussions on different topics and subjects and stuff on there. It's just a community where people get together and talk about all different things and different aspects of not just spirituality, but just life in general. So, but everybody, I want to thank you for coming out. Once again, Greg, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. It was fun. We'll do it again.
Absolutely. We definitely will. So, everybody, have a good night, and we will talk to you soon.